It's now time for the Pitt Mailbag Show here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your hosts, Chris Carter and Stephen Thompson. And as always, you can find the show every Tuesday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all the work from our Post-Gazette sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, including our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast. As that before, I'm joined by Stephen Thompson. Stephen, we had another crazy game to cover this weekend. Pitt pulled off the win. 17-15, close fashion, crazy game. We broke that down in our post-game analysis, but now Pitt's on a bye, 6-0, gearing up for the second half of its season here. I don't think there were too many people, including me, who saw this being where they were at this point of the season.
Yeah, I think I predicted 6 wins in all for the season, so I could still be right technically, but I'm not counting on Pitt going 0 for 6 the rest of the way. So I think I'm going to have to settle with the fact that my record prediction is going to be wrong. Maybe as soon as next week, but who knows?
It could very well be. I picked them to win 7 games, so I got one more win in me before it's gonna be pressing that. But let's get into some of our questions here, because with their success, and I think it's rationally so, the Pitt Panthers have got people thinking, what about the postseason? Like, now that they're 6 games through and they've played some tough games. Also, some of the teams they've beaten have proven to be pretty decent. West Virginia is 3-3, but Cincinnati 4-2, starting to impress people. So I think that there's certainly some things to warrant there. So Connor asked us a question on Twitter saying, could a college football playoff appearance for Pitt launch them into a tier of annual contenders, quote unquote, teams that probably won't win or even make the playoff every year, but will always be in the mix? What's that kind of impact on the program? Steven, there's no guarantee that Pitt's going to make the college football playoffs. Like I said, they got to finish strong, and there's going to be a whole bunch of teams battling to get in the mix. But it's certainly something on the radar. And let's entertain this just for a moment here. What is that? One, could Pitt change its trajectory of its football program by just simply making the college football playoffs?
I don't think it would be a college football playoff appearance that would change the trajectory for Pitt football, but I think part of that trajectory change has already kind of been in the works. I mean, as you and I were walking out of the stadium on Saturday night, I thought for a minute about, okay, 2021, great year, 2022, great year, 2023, bad year. And it looks like 2024 is headed towards another really good year. If it keeps at this current pace, Pitt could have a third year, could finish ranked for a third year in the past 4 years. And then you look at who they're able to bring back on both sides of the ball from this team, and you think that 2025 could be even better for them. Obviously that's pending what they do down the stretch of this year, but I think a college football playoff appearance would be more symptomatic of what they're building and symptomatic of a launch into maybe what Connor's referring to here, which is a tier of annual contenders, a pool that is much bigger now than it was for the 14 playoff, obviously. But a college football playoff appearance this year, I think would represent something different from a launching point. I don't think it would be where Pitt would kind of get started from. That would, in hindsight, be 2021 or even 2020. So, playoff appearance, I think would show you that Pitt has made themselves into something like that. Someone who can, because think about it, if you're ranked, at any point during the season, you are at one point, you are in one way or another pretty damn close to being in contention for the 12-team playoffs. So an appearance this year, like I said, would be more, I think, symptomatic than indicative of future success. I think we would be looking at something from the past as a launching point for where they're at now.
I do think that Pitt puts itself in this range that if they make a college football playoff, it's now something that you can put in the minds of every Pitt recruit that you talk to. Hey, we had a shot at the national title last year, which, that hasn't been a conversation for Pitt fans in forever. So it's something that I think that absolutely can be. And I also think something, Stephen, and even beyond just Pitt, we were talking about this. We were watching college football games Saturday night after the Pitt game. I'm not sure that there's a team out there that I feel is completely indomitable and won't lose to anybody, because everyone's playing each other tight. And I think that there's a lot of things from teams that are weaknesses that are poking out that if the right team catches them in the right day, they could go down. I'm not saying Pitt's going to win the national championship, but I'm saying that this might be the best chance ever for a team that's not Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, to go and win the national title this year. And if you're Pitt, and let's say Pitt wins a playoff game, let's say they get in, they win one playoff game, the fever that would be around this town to be like, hey, they're in that kind of a conversation, it would change everything. I think it would give a supercharge into the base to be like, hey, you know what? What if you get this team some more dogs? What if you invest more into this team and to get more resources for the players in NIL? That could be a conversation that gets had if they get there. But if they fall short and they keep falling short and they won't get there, then you kind of don't get in that conversation. But certainly, I think there's a lot of potential there for Pitt to be one of those teams that's considered a perennial contender to get into the college football playoffs. Which, hey, if you're that's the most national attention Pitt football's gotten in a long time.
Right, and I think you touched on something briefly that's really important too. It's about how you perform in that playoff game. So even if you lose in the first round, you got to be competitive. You can't show up to fill in the blank, whether it's Iowa State or Penn State or Ohio State, Oregon, whoever's hosting that playoff game. Assuming that Pitt doesn't host it itself, you have to be competitive. You have to show that you are actually in the mix there against one of the better teams, the elite teams in the country, in order to make people believe that this is something sustainable and that Pitt can be one of those annual contenders.
I think so as well. Certainly something to watch there if Pitt can make the college football playoffs. Let's move on. Let's talk about some rankings for Pitt basketball, because Pitt basketball wasn't ranked. Not a single top 25 vote went to Pitt men's basketball in the preseason, but Pitt fans are talking a potential Sweet 16. This comes from Adam on Twitter. Adam asks, who will be proven right by season's end, the voters or the fans? Stephen, you're one of those voters, buddy. Why didn't you rank Pitt? Do you hate them?
I don't hate Pitt. There is just, when you look at college basketball, you look at Division I basketball, I mean, there are a lot of teams that could be deserving of one of those spots in the top 25. The top 10 and 15 and even 20 are probably laid out pretty evenly. I think everyone knows kind of who those teams are, but once you kind of get into the later spots, it's really hard to figure out who those last 5, 6, 7 teams are. So the other thing is, you look at who made the Sweet 16 last year. I mean, did NC State get a vote in the top 25 last year during the preseason? Probably not. I wouldn't guess that they would. And they made it all the way to the Final Four. So, I don't think not earning a top 25 vote means that you are automatically going to be a bad team. The other thing is, this doesn't have an impact on NCAA tournament seeding at all.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, the AP poll is largely meaningless as you go through the season. So both sides of these can be right. I think both you and I, Chris, agree that this Pitt team can be pretty good. It has a ton of potential as long as the pieces gel. We like the way the pieces fit on paper, but we're going to have to see how they look when they actually hit the court. So I also do believe that the maybe local perception of this team is higher. The local expectations for this year's Pitt team are definitely higher than the external ones, if for no other reason than the fact that Bub Carrington and Blake Hinson. Blake Hinson was one of the best players in the ACC, a first-team All-ACCer. He's out of there. Bub Carrington gets drafted. Those are two very public moves that I think a lot of national people saw. So if you're not paying attention to the minutia of how Pitt filled out the rest of its roster and what Jalen Lowe did in the second half and things of that nature, you're probably not going to have a super high opinion of this Pitt team. So it's understandable, but I also don't think not getting a vote keeps a lid on their potential at all.
No, yeah, I think that if you look back every year, there's teams that weren't ranked that made a big run, that did a lot of damage, and earned a lot of respect throughout the year. Pitt is very much a young team with a lot of the players that it has, but young with a lot of promise. Jalen Lowe among those guys. They got new pieces in there like Amsal Delay, who they're expecting to get back very soon. Cam Corrin, who could add as a formidable piece in the paint. And then you still got Ishmael Leggett. You still got the Diaz Graham twins, Zach Austin, Papa Conte, Brandon Cummings, young guys. There's a lot of young guys on this team that have a lot of upside, and I think that's something that cannot be overlooked as far as what Pitt can do. So because of that, yeah, they're not going to get ranked, but you know what? I think that by the end of the season, there's going to be a different conversation because I do think this Pitt team can do a lot of damage when it comes to scoring, when it comes to playing together and taking steps forward this year. So thank you, Adam, for your question. We now move on to Chaz, who sent this one via email. Chaz, I had to shorten this email a little bit, but said that have defenses figure out Eli Holstein, of course, had a rough day, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions against Cal. He said Saturday was his worst game yet. Chaz, I'll lead on this one, Stephen, but I think Chaz, I think it's tough to say defenses have figured him out. I think that, and he kind of admitted this, he didn't stick to his reads. I think that if you're a defense, what you want to do is you want to try to take away his first read and force him to look long and hope that he does not look throughout the progressions of each play. Because one thing I noted about Cade Bell offense, somebody's always open. There's always a chance, and if you just work through your rotations, you'll find that guy somewhere. And I think that's what Eli Holstein didn't do against Cal a whole lot. He was going to his first read and then going to his deep read, and then he was trying to make a play, and then he would try to make a play with his legs. But if Eli Holstein can get that vision down, that's something that I noted, even after his first few games, which were really impressive. I was like, hey, I think this guy still isn't seeing the whole field. And look, he's 19. He's not going to see the whole field right away. It takes a lot of time to develop that kind of field presence. But if Eli Holstein does that, I don't think there will be a way to figure him out if you're opposing defenses. But I do think that could be an Achilles heel for Pitt if he falls back into those kind of traps moving forward. Granted, he took full responsibility for the offense not clicking against Cal. Stephen, what say you? Is this a trend that's going to go the other way for Holstein, or is this a bump in the road?
It seems like only a bump in the road to me. Cal leads the country in interceptions. They've been doing this to a lot of quarterbacks that are more experienced and better than Eli Holstein. So they have some experience with this. I don't think it's something that's going to that it's something possible for teams to replicate over and over again as they go down the rest of the season. I think Eli Holstein's going to have a bad game again, but maybe for different reasons. So he's got some growing to do, certainly. But I don't believe that this kind of performance, this kind of defensive performance from Cal, which has really great experienced athletes on the back end and has a really good defensive head coach in Justin Wilcox, is something that opposing teams are going to be able to do routinely week in, week out. And the other thing is Eli Holstein's going to get better. Cade Bell clearly has some chops as not just a play caller, but a quarterback's coach as well. And when you're dealing with a true freshman, sometimes you just kind of got to let him go. You can't control him with an Xbox controller out there. If you're Cade Bell, you got to let him be Eli Holstein. And a lot of the great things that he does is off schedule. So you just have to find a way for him to strike that balance between aggression, looking for those deep plays and those big splash plays, but also surviving down to down and keeping his offense on schedule. That's something that I think he's going to learn to do, and that'll only get better with experience. It's not something that I'm very worried about at this point right now.
I think so too. I think that Eli Holstein, he's young. He's played very well. I think he was due for a clunker. He was due for a bad game. The question I had would Pitt be able to weather it? And Pitt did. And that deserves a lot of points, which leads right into our next question. Bernie, who also emailed saying, was Pitt's defensive success against Cal sustainable, or was Cal just that bad? And Bernie, I'm not saying that Pitt figured it out and its defense is about to be elite or something like that, but I do think Pitt's taking step forward. I mean, we've seen the play of the linebackers, Kyle Lewis, Rasheem Biles. Rasheem Biles didn't even play in this game. Raylan Lovelace did. We've seen those guys take off. We've seen Pitt safeties play really well. I also think their corners are playing really well. The biggest thing about the group was, could the D line come right along? And the addition of Sean Fitzsimmons, I truly think, has helped them get there. Not just with him, but with him in the rotation to kind of get everyone else some rest. I think Pitt's defense can kind of get back to the way that it plays when Pat Narduzzi's teams are at their best. Now, if you go back, like Pitt's defense under Pat Narduzzi has never been completely dominant to the point where it shuts everyone out all the time. It's not like the Steelers defense when it's at its best and taking away everything that you want to do. But what Pitt's defense does is, if its offense is scoring, it's putting pressure on you. It's getting after your quarterback. It's creating turnovers. It's forcing you to win in ways that you don't usually want to win by. And it's being aggressive and setting the tone. All those things, I think this Pitt defense can do. I think that Cal's offense certainly didn't have its best day, but I also think that Pitt was a big reason for that happening. So to answer your question, Bernie, I think Pitt's defense is trending upwards, and we still haven't seen the best of it that we will of it this season. What say you, Stephen?
I say 11 tackles for loss and 6 sacks are maybe not sustainable. Those aren't numbers that I think you're going to see them put up week in and week out. But I could not agree with you more about the addition of Son Fitzsimmons. I mean, that is a top line defensive tackle. That is one of probably Pitt's best defensive tackle that missed the first 4 weeks of the year. And then you saw what he was able to do against North Carolina, putting a little bit more pressure on the Tar Heels in that game, and then wreaking some havoc against Cal as well and holding their running game in check. Pitt did a lot of really great things, I think, at every level against Cal. I mean, it wasn't just the defensive line getting some pressure, but these defensive backs being able to string out plays on runs to the edge when Cal was trying to use their speed against them, covering really well. Like you said, the corners have been dramatically improved as well. And then these linebackers have been great all year. So I see steps forward every week. It wasn't just the defensive line, but like you said, the corners have gotten progressively better and better week in, week out. And while these linebackers have been incredible too, and this team and this defensive line, as it's gotten more healthy, and as these really young defensive ends, young, inexperienced, whatever word you want to use, have grown up a little bit, gotten some more game experience, this unit has gotten better. So individually, when you look at the box score, maybe some of these numbers aren't replicable, but I think the Pitt defense, I'm much more confident in what they're able to do week in, week out than I was, say after Kent State, certainly, but after Cincinnati and West Virginia as well, too.
I feel you on that. I think Pitt's defense has been getting closer and closer. I covered them when they went on their ACC championship run, and that defense ended up being pretty tough. And one thing that defense did was it kept learning its lessons throughout the season, and then it applied those lessons against Wake Forest in the ACC championship game, shutting them out for the final 3 quarters of play. I think this Pitt defense is picking up lessons along the way as well. I think that they're eliminating their mistakes. They're getting better at stuffing the run. They're learning how to rush the passer with their new D-line coach. I think that a lot of really good positive steps are coming from this defense. I'm not saying that they're ready to take on the world and shut down everybody, or even play, elite football just by themselves for the rest of the way. I think Eli Holstein and this offense is going to have to get back to clicking. They can't keep hoping to win 17, 15 games the rest of the season. But if Eli Holstein does get back to clicking, and you see, and you see the defense playing, not completely, just allowing 15 points, but closer to the level that they did against Cal, that could make Pitt a very, very dangerous team down the stretch as they play these final 6 ACC games.
You were absolutely right that even at its best, these Pat Narduzzi defenses don't really look very similar to the Michigan State defenses that he coached, where they were, in really low scoring game, where the defense was the dominant unit, and that was the one that kind of carried those Michigan State teams. Here, it's more about being opportunistic, or at least these Pitt teams that he's assembled have been more about being opportunistic. They're not exactly elite on defense, but if they can create havoc and force turnovers, that's how Pitt wins, and that's how they want to win. So it's not necessarily about shutting everyone out, but it's about, kind of being in tune with the fundamentals and the key tenets of the defense, which are not, shutting teams out. It's about taking some risks and then capitalizing when teams make mistakes.
I feel you on that entirely. I think that that's a big part of what all football is, but Pat Narduzzi, what they're doing, you're right. They're not completely shutting teams down, but they're taking advantage of mistakes and they're setting tones with their defensive style of play. Certainly what Pitt needs to do. Thank you to Connor, Adam, Chaz, and Bernie, who sent our questions in for today's Pitt Mailbag show here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, from Stephen Thompson and myself, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning in for a Tuesday Pitt Mailbag show. Reminder, this show is every Tuesday covering all things Pitt here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go to post-gazette.com to read all of our work and get ready for the rest of the season. It's a bye week this week, but they're back at home Thursday night next week against Syracuse, and that's going to be a huge ACC game because Syracuse has played pretty well this season, and that'll kick off the rest of their ACC schedule. And also Pitt basketball right around the corner sooner than you think. We'll have all that coverage here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We'll see you there. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.